expressive piano songs. So then I try to find one like where it's my level or maybe a bit of a challenge and try to play it.
Yeah. Okay. So then, do you listen to audio recordings or YouTube video, whatever, before to play it like the performer you like? Or do you let your art and your inside and your fingers expressing what they want to? What do you think you do first?
Usually how I want to play it.
Okay.
How I think it should go.
Okay, good. Because most of the time, of course, you practice. We all have to practice, and then you will. I don't know if you have a teacher. You will listen to the teacher, but everything is written on the score. The composer, most of the time, 90% of the time, put everything he wants you to do, okay, to play. So, of course, you can listen to your teacher, but at the same time, if everybody play the same, it's very boring, okay? So, why do we like pianists more than others? Why do we like cellists or violinists more than others? This is because after the academic lessons and strong foundations, they get back their freedom. They play as they want to play, and they let their art and their fingers expressing what they want. Okay? And when you play the piano, as I said before, you talk to people. You talk to people and you tell them something that you cannot narrate with words. So it's important for you, if you want them to understand what you want to tell them, to let your art talking through your fingers. Otherwise, you will play like, you know. I saw at the entrance, I should not say that in a music store, but piano store. I saw this, a piano playing just by itself.
Not even the same way.
For me,
For entertaining young
it's
children,
it's just a disaster. No good. I don't know who invented that. It's
someone who could not play.
exactly, but it's just horrible. Okay, just horrible. So
They should
let's
put a skeleton prop in front of it.
Oh man, that's what I used to. That's what I
Let's-
used to say. You should have like a ghost, like a figure.
Yeah,
like,
we
for
need-
like a haunted house for like little
Yeah.
kids.
So, to answer to your question, of course, listen to performers, pianists you like, but at the end, it's you in front of the piano. You let your art. And when you play in front of a jury, if someday you will have to play in front of a jury, what will they like the most is your personality. You can have a wonderful technique, virtuosity, whatever, but at the end, what they will like you is to be different than the other.
So there's no one correct way to play like any piece.
No,
Okay.
no.
Unless you are constantly dragging and exaggerating something
Yeah.
that the composer specifically said not to do, then I think you're good.
I'm sure that everybody knows Vladimir Horowitz. Okay.
Vladimir Horowitz. Yes, I was just imagining. when
Okay,
you were
so
talking. Yes, I was just thinking of him.
Horowitz,
Read my mind.
for some people, was a monster in front of his piano because he allowed himself to do crazy things all the time. Take some freedom and do what he wanted to do. When you arrive on stage, he told himself, I'm the king. Okay? So the king does what he wants. And sometimes in Chopin, whatever, he took, tempi very slow, but he was a genius. He was a total genius because he was playing, he was following the score, but at the end, he was doing what he wanted to.
It's
So-
very distinctive. You can tell
Exactly.
that it's him when he plays.
Exactly.
You can just tell immediately, oh, that's
Yeah.
Horowitz.
Francois, I have a question about chamber music.
Yes.
I have never played in a group, so I really can't tell.
Yeah.
But when 3 or to 5 musicians play together, can they really hear themselves, the balance of each
Of
instrument? Or do you need somebody who's standing a few feet away who can actually listen to all of that and coach them on saying, this part, the piano was too loud, or you need to bring up the cello a little bit, or the violin? I mean, is it possible? Because I know as a pianist, it's hard to do that because you're listening to the way the piano sounds when you're sitting there, which could be a little different from the audience,
So most
but
of the
more
time,
so in a chamber
yeah, but most
music.
of the time for chamber music, each musician practice on his
Right,
side,
right.
his score, and then we work together for several days. And of course, we work on the balance between each instrument.
Yes.
And at the end, depending again on the venue where you play, each time for the salon, I arrive early in the afternoon because the musicians come and they ask for the balance, about the balance.
Yes.
So sometimes what they did in their room all together, of course in a different venue, the sound is completely different. And also with a different piano,
Right.
it's completely different. So of course, yes, you have to adjust. But I would say that when you play chamber music, which is also a wonderful way to play music, is that you have to listen to everybody. It's not only you. You forget that you are a soloist. You are not a soloist anymore. You are part of a group, and everybody. It's like building a cathedral. Okay, each piece, each score, is a part of the foundation of the score. So this is why you have to listen to each piece very carefully.
Right.
And as I said before, have you heard a cellist breathing? It's fantastic. Have you heard a violinist breathing, between two melodies? It's fantastic. So these things need, of course, to be very not visible, but need to be respected deeply when you are a pianist playing with strings, because they want you to hear what they have to express. So it's very, if you have never played chamber music before, you should, because it's a magical experience. And then I'm sure that you will not play piano the same way. Yeah.
Interesting comment.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay. All right.
In my case, I was in Korea.
Yeah.
I was 8 years old and my sister 6 years old.
Wow. Okay.
My father bought a piano, and piano teacher came every week.
Yeah.
So my father was very enthusiastic. Instead, never said of study as a school thing. Piano, you have to practice piano. It is not easy. Then I got piano lessons from 8 to 18 years old.
Wow.
Then I went to college,
Yeah.
so I had to quit. Then my sister went to New England Conservatory Music and got masters in piano.
Okay. Wow. That's great.
Yeah. That's my story.
Wow. And you still play?
Since this amateur pianist, I studied.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Meantime,
Yeah.
I was.
You should. It's very important.
Yeah.
Francois, you said you had to play from 8 to 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
Well, what happens to reading, writing, arithmetic, science, and all these other at the elementary school?
So when you enter the conservatory, most of the time, it was my case, you cannot go to a regular school anymore. So in Paris, for the students of the conservatory, they have a special school, part-time. So in the morning, I went to my regular studies, okay? And in the afternoon, back to my piano. So I had to, hurry to eat my lunch very fast, and then quick, because you have, again, you have beside the piano class, you have different classes that you have also to work on.
Do all the students would, did you and the rest of your colleagues have in your mind that you will be concert pianists? That's what your goal was. What were the goals? Was it to become a concert
Of
pianist?
course,
and earn a living?
and this is also something that I would have loved to learn from a different country like Russia, or because there is so much. You enter, you are a small child. You enter the conservatory, and you are not strong enough to endure that kind of competition. You cannot have any friend in your class because each of the pupils, the students in your class are potential competitors. And what's happening? So of course you want to be and the teacher tell you, you have to be the best. You have to be the best. And every year you have competition after competition after competition. So it's, in a way, it's not human. It's not. So, and I really think that this is something that we have to change to.
Is it the same way now then, do you think? They have the same regimen?
Unfortunately, I think so.
Yeah.
In
Wow.
France, for sure.
Uh-huh.
Competition exists. I will not say that, by miracle, it will disappear.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that there is a way to anticipate, especially when you teach young kids. I was a teacher in France too, and I have seen kids, pressure like, crazy
Wow.
by their parents. And I told the parents, did you ask your child if they are happy and they wanted to?
Uh-huh.
No.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so ask them first.
Yeah, just because they're gifted doesn't mean that that's what
Exactly,
they want
and
to
we
do.
have to cherish. We have to cherish kids. We have to be so careful with them because those years are so fragile emotionally.
Yeah.
So you don't have to hurt them like that. It's very, very important. So I'm sure that to answer to your question, I'm sure that there is a way to be in competition with other students, but differently.
Yeah, more human.
More human, yeah.
Well, that's interesting, that whole point, because I'm probably not alone in thinking that, oh, wow, anybody who could go to a conservatory like
Yeah.
that, they come out, their life's wonderful. They go on and everything is
Unfortunately,
great. Yeah.
unfortunately, this is what they tell you since the
Yeah.
beginning. Okay? You get your first prize, you are the star. Okay? Okay, I got my first prize, and then
Then
nothing.
what? Oh my God.
Nothing. You have to compete.
Uh-oh.
Again, international piano competition. I did some. Okay? And it's just more and more anxiety, frustration. Where is the pleasure of performing?
Mhm.
You forget the pleasure of performing. You are just a machine in front of your instrument, practicing hours, being sure that you will not make a mistake or forget something. Or
Wow.
no, this is not the purpose of playing music and making music and sharing. So I'm sure that if you are so frustrated and so stressed by that, I think that people don't feel beauty and sensitivity coming out of yourself because
It sounds, unfortunately, it sounds like it's turned into a livelihood.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
A good part of the people
Yeah,
that come out of there.
exactly.
And that's
Yeah.
all they know, so they continue
Yes.
with it.
Yes.
Wow. Oh.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's when you see people like that and all the pianists and say, oh, I love him, he loved me, and it's just bullshit. I'm sorry to tell you that. It's just the reality. Okay? No.
Francois, do you think we should ask the people in the audience may have some questions?
Yes, please.
I do. I have a question. I'm building on Lulu's question of playing in chamber music, and she hasn't done it. Now, I've played a concerto with an orchestra, Beethoven's Fifth. And I know that without the conductor to literally keep us all together, the French horns were prone to wandering off in their own direction repeatedly and entering at the wrong time. And we needed that conductor very much. And I felt much more in tune with, say, the first violinist who was close to me. How would you characterize the difference between performing a concerto versus a chamber music work?
Good question.
Well, when you perform a concerto, you are supposed to be the soloist. Okay? So the orchestra is supposed to follow you. Of course, you have the conductor, you are supposed to follow the conductor, but at the end, you are the soloist, and the orchestra, even if you make a big mistake, they have to follow you. And there is not this, again, you arrive on the stage, the orchestra has practiced before your arrival, you arrive, and you try to match. You try to connect to them, and they try to connect to you, to your tempo, to what you have learned and what you want them to do. Because most of the time, the pianist, the soloist arrives and talks to the conductor and tell him, okay, this is the tempo I want, and okay. So chamber music is completely different because each person, in a way, is a soloist. Piano trio, piano quartet, piano quintet. There is no soloist. As I told you before, each musician is a stone, and is part of the foundation. You build something all together, and at the end, it sounds beautiful because it's also very important to have a emotionally deep connection between all the musicians. It's also why it's very important when I build programs for my series. I choose, I know now a lot of musicians in the orchestras and in LA, different orchestras, so I know who will play better with this person than the other one, because of course you have some personalities who much better than others, and this is also something which is very important when you build chamber music stuff. You have to be sure that personally and of course musically everything works well. But to answer to your question, try chamber music. You will see it's fantastic. You should do it. Yeah. The experience is phenomenal.
Thank you. Hello, I don't know who your name is in the audience, but
I'm Roberta.
hello. When you asked that question, in my mind immediately went to something which I think I must have read in one of my piano books, and I thought of when I read this, and it said that the difference between like a symphony and chamber music is that a symphony is like just the redistribution of sound. You have all these copies everywhere because you have like all this section of violins are all playing the same thing. All this section of violins are all playing, violin A, B. It's just like a duplication of sound. But versus chamber music, they are all playing their own individual score.
Yeah.
And I congratulations
me.
on playing a concerto.
Yeah.
Some of you are a little more soft-spoken and they can't hear you.
Oh.
Would you hand them the mic?
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. I think your voice is a little soft.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Gonna reach. You go there?
Yes.
It's not gonna reach.
Oh, it's not gonna
yeah,
reach.
to-
Okay.
Rip the,
You guys have to
That's
move
all I
up.
had to say.
I have to stand up.
Yeah.
Oh.
You want to come? Come. Yeah, it's too short.
I'm sorry if I'm a little
Oh,
too.
turn it up.
You open it, yeah.
Voilà.
Oh! Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm very shy. Anyway, that's kind of all I really have to say, but I can reiterate it if anyone didn't hear.
I thought I heard you well enough, and
Alright.
it was interesting because your comment gelled in my mind. I felt sections, not individual
Yes.
instruments. And in the vision of how this is phrased, where this ends, this is what I want here. I want this driving force coming into the, into the rondo. I want it to be this way. I want a rhythmic precision coming into this. And it worked in the end. But I have to admit, when I heard recordings later of practice, all I could do was laugh.
Yeah.
Wow, you're a very mature pianist then, to know exactly what you want.
Well, my teacher and I had many a discussion, and she was one of those of the Russian school who ended up having to raise me again and raise me right in her mind. We're still dear friends.
Yes.
And earlier, this is very loud. Earlier when Mr. Francois right here was talking about how it's disconnected when you have the performers up on a stage, and it immediately made me think of what Chopin said to tell his students, how he said, concerts are never real music. You must give up hoping to hear in them the art of music.
Ah.
So that's a little something to think about. Okay, I'm going to put this microphone.
Well, are there any more questions? Okay, great.
What advice would you give to someone that wants to compose their own classical music?
Sorry, what did you say?
What?
What advice would you give to someone that wants to compose their own classical music? If any.
To compose.
I have advice, but you say.
I mean,
Use the microphone.
If you wanted to compose.
I am a composer. I have composed a few music scores for movies. Yeah, because it's also part of my musical journey. After the conservatory, I thought that there was a lack of creativity in performing, and I wanted to create something. So if you know, some of the major movie composers, some of their scores are just so beautiful. So my mentor in France was Georges Delerue. If you have the opportunity to listen to his scores, very melodic, very classic, very Schubertian, by the way. And he gave me the desire to compose. And I did 2 scores for movies in France. And it brought me also another idea of music, of performing music, because when you write a score and you are just in front of musicians playing your music for the first time, it is something magical. So this is another thing that we don't have most of the time the opportunity to feel, to discover. So yeah, I did it.
So do you start with like the melody or the chord progression or the overall story you're feeling?
When I compose,
Yeah.
the melody.
Okay.
Yeah, melody first. Because this is the first thing that you have in your mind. I don't know if you guys like to improvise at the piano, but most of the time when you improvise, your right hand is immediately trying to make a melody, to find a line that will please yourself and touch yourself. So this is the main thing that I recommend when you start to compose something. And then the harmonies, they just come by themselves. It's just automatic.
I would like to say though, I can think of at least one instance where I wrote something and the harmonies came to me first. And so this particular instance I'm thinking of, I was trying to figure out what chords I wanted, and it took me like a few hours of sitting on my piano, and I finally figured something out, and then I was like, oh no, did I just copy off on and off without realizing it? But then no, I was like, okay, these are gonna be the chords, and then that one is, I can think of at least one time where I thought of the chords first. There's probably other instances, but right now I can just think of the one. Usually, though, he's right, usually your mind
Yeah.
is can figure out, using relative pitch, you can figure out where the melodies are before you can figure out what the chords are.
I'd like to ask a question. Of all of us in this room, how many are jazz pianists? Francois, do you
Well,
play jazz?
that's an interesting thing because, I went to San Francisco Conservatory of Music as well. I studied with Nathan Schwartz there. You probably know him because he was there for a long time. And the conservatory at the time had a very negative, a lot of animosity towards anyone that had the concept that they appreciate jazz music. In fact, when at one of my juries, I was playing a Charlie Parker piece called Donna Lee, and the president of the school said, "Can we hear the Bach, please?"
Wow.
So it was just like, and so.
You could have improvised.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing because if you really look at it, Chopin was really improvising all that stuff when he was composing it. Those players were at such a high level that even Bach, they were at such a high level that was how a lot of that was manifesting in their playing. And so the irony is, 25 years later, the school was deriving a lot of money from having a jazz program, and that comes back to an interesting thing about the society generating a huge pool of teachers, because there's no places to perform. The more we go farther down the line, the more performance opportunities are being eradicated in jazz clubs, whether it's just a financial thing, hence, COVID especially. But the interesting thing is society's development of the idea of what's important is actually being coerced upon society to where, and there's nothing wrong with sports players, but when you open up the newspaper and you read about these $25 million contracts, and I think in an alternate universe, if the importance of the piano was put on such the pedestal that sports players are, all of a sudden there would be this interest in society where people would be telling their children when they grow up, "Oh, yeah, you should play piano. You should, you should do this."
Why
So.
did you, sorry, I was curious why you asked that question.
I asked that question because, one thing that Francois said about that creativity. If your classical music we're usually introduced to it unless we are ourselves composing classical music. I certainly don't. There's a score, and you learn the score. You learn, and very rarely will we not be playing anything but what's written on the page. When we improvise, when we bring in creativity, our own creativity, maybe some others, then we're composing jazz. For me, jazz is definitely creativity. You can go anywhere with it. And what's so beautiful about jazz too, it's really chamber music, because you're also playing with others. And it's really quite beautiful. But I like what you said. It's true. If we place the money stigma to different, I think we do that. I think I grew up hearing that I should be a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher.
And do you know what the most miserable jobs in the world are, according to a survey? A lawyer is the most miserable. The farmer is the least miserable. You know why? I think that's why. Because they're out
in the beauty of nature, and they have what was intended for them to have. They have exercise and freedom and fresh air and the sunlight, and then you have a lawyer who is forced into this office, and they're indoors, they do not get sunlight, they do not move, and they are under so much pressure, and you can easily see why this will be one of the most miserable jobs to have.
But they make a lot of money, some of them do, yeah.
Yeah, getting back to, this has been a really interesting conversation, and I really thank all of you. But to make a plug right now for what this gentleman said about jazz and Nancy's question, I'm going to make a plug here for amateur pianists. We're going to have one of the events coming up this summer. It's going to be called Anything Goes. We're not quite sure we like the title yet, it's still a working title, but it is like piano music of any other genre. I mean, it could be classical, of course, but if you like jazz, if you have, your own compositions. So that is a chance for us to try to break out of the box of classical music.
Don't we already do that, Lulu? We do it
In November, we have duets and more, where you play with another instrument or another singer or somebody else. That's a standing event in November. But this one, we can add a new sort of annual event, which is called Anything Goes, or something like that. We're trying to come up with a better title. Yeah, so it could be, I mean, not that we don't allow jazz at any one of our events, but people tend to play more classical.
Well, I brought up, not to name drop or, try to make myself important or anything, but it's an interesting thing because the conservatory didn't have a distaste towards, it's that phrase, legit music.
Legit music, okay.
And
Wow.
and you would hear that. You would hear, non-legit versus legit music.
So what was their opinion on, say, Vince Guaraldi?
Well, that's an interesting thing considering San Francisco, the connection with him there.
You're a jazz pianist.
Actually, I'm a professional pianist. I play,
All sorts of things, not just jazz.
I play all sorts of things.
And classical music.
I like classical music. So it's an interesting thing when you get paid to do what you do, and then it becomes a double-edged sword because your appreciation for it goes out the window. 90% of what you do, especially when you're a professional of some sort, you're playing what you don't like.
Yeah, yes, there's your audience.
So,
That's
so
what
it's
we-
an interesting thing. My last job was 4 months on the cruise ship, playing for the house band for Princess Cruises. They just called me, they wanted me to go to the Panama Canal. I was scheduled to go, and I didn't sign a contract yet, and I just shook my head and I said, why are you 14 hours to get where it take me 4 hours? So I was inconveniently sick, and then they called me again immediately after trying to send me to Barcelona. 14-hour flight right there, and get off the airport and go on the ship and play. Bon Jovi rocks show basically on steroids with lights going, where the light comes on right when you hit the repeat and you don't see the repeat and you miss 45-minute rehearsals only for a 45-minute show.
It's a different world, huh? Different world.
So hence, so jazz musician, no, just musician in general, because when you put things in a box, and not meaning yourself, but when things are put in a box, it closes off and it creates a barrier.
Yeah.
So, So,
People love things being
yeah,
in boxes.
yeah, and as I mentioned before, Chopin was improvising.
Yes, and I was just about to say, and that's like a dying
Cadenzas
art.
were improvisations.
That's in
And one of the finest jazz pianists in the world, Keith Jarrett, was one of the finest classical pianists as well. And he's recorded a lot of stuff. So the bottom line is, the term should be probably musician, even instead of pianist,
Pianist, right.
because you know, they're multifaceted people, composers, pianists, chamber musician. I mean, the worst thing to be would be put in a box, oh, he's just a chamber musician,
Right.
nothing else.
Yes. So it looks like we have one more question, and that'll be the last question, and we'll have to wrap it up. So go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to say that Anything Goes, I think that's a great name because it's the name of a famous show, Broadway show, done by Cole Porter, who was really famous for writing a lot of songs that jazz musicians do.
So,
uh,
okay, good.
So-
I'll send it back to the
so
board.
show tunes is another huge area.
Absolutely,
that
Broadway
a lot
and
of people
show
play
tunes.
piano,
Yes.
and they want to play, you know, those, at least in the past, they would want to play the show tunes.
Right.
Right, and you just have books upon books of most pianists in America. They had a piano at home, they might have had some classical lessons, but when they wanted to pull something out, it was these show tunes.
Exactly. Very good point. Thank you. Francois, before we close, would you like to say, do you have a few more comments or?
I don't think so. I think I've tried to express the way I live and feel music. And I hope that, I mean, my English is not so good, but I hope you would have understood what I wanted to share with you today. And again, let's hope that all of us will be able to attract more people
To piano playing.
piano or classical music. The classical music world is so magical, so we definitely need to save it.
And so
Well,
could
thank-
you share with us what, next week,
Yeah,
Sunday?
next Sunday, May 21st, we have our Salon de Musique. So it's featuring 3 Jewish composers who were banned by the Nazi regime. So we have Mendelssohn, we have a fantastic German composer called Robert Kahn. With the Salon de Musique, I try to also to reintroduce composers, fantastic romantic or neo-romantic composers who were forgotten or scores lost into drawers. So we have this guy also who had to escape from Germany, and we have also, of course, Gustav Mahler. So it's a wonderful chamber music program for piano quartet, and we have the organization ADL who will come and talk about racism, intolerance, and all that kind of interesting problems we have more and more all around the world.
Well, I think Francois deserves a big round of applause. Thank you very much.